Davao City envisions to be a globally livable city and a center of excellence in governance, investment, tourism, climate change adaptation, disaster resiliency, and sustainable growth driven by an empowered citizenry. It channels to realize this vision as the players and stakeholders in the city's economic, social, infrastructure, and environment sectors, as evinced by their stated goals. There are several considerations in the process of updating the city's comprehensive land use plan. We made sure that we are compliant to the basic requirements of the Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development. First is the result of the climate and disaster risk assessment. The city's susceptibility to hazards was ascertained from the study that 139 barangays are highly susceptible to flood, including the commonly flooded areas of Matina Pangi, Matina Playa, and Tigato. 100 barangays are highly susceptible to landslides. 34 barangays are highly susceptible to storm surge, with a height from 2 to 5 meters. 26 barangays are traversed by the Colosas, Tacudao, Lacson, and Tamugan fault lines. And 76 barangays are highly susceptible to liquefaction. The succeeding slides will show you the hazard susceptibility maps, indicating the areas which may be potentially affected. The disaster risk map shown is the final output of the CDRA study, highlighting the areas at risk to flood and landslide. Mitigating measures have been identified to inform the city's concerned policymaking bodies and offices. For the purpose of the CDRA process, 5 exposure areas are singled out for assessment. First is population, which includes the general population per barangay. Second is critical point facilities, which refer to health, education, social and protective services and facilities. Third is lifeline utilities, which include major infrastructure and utilities such as roads and bridges, water, and power. Fourth is natural resource-based production areas, for areas utilized for agricultural production. And fifth is urban use areas, which are for residential, commercial, industrial, parks and playgrounds, and cemetery use. In the succeeding slides, we will give you a glimpse of the decision areas for each of the above-mentioned exposure areas. Population, urban use, lifeline utilities, critical point facilities, natural resource-based production areas. All the major decision areas of the 5 exposure areas were consolidated into one map, which indicates the priority areas for the whole Davao City. A total of 16 barangays were identified as areas of high priority for disaster mitigation and adaptation measures. Another important variable considered in the CLUP updating is demography, paying due attention to the projected doubling rate of the city's population by 2045. Inputs were also generated from the sectoral studies. Data on planned projects, facilities, utilities, and services inform the additional area requirements which impact the land use plan of the city. The sectoral studies served as a compass in determining the strategic direction of the city as it captures the current development trend of the city in the various sectors: economic, social, infrastructure, and the environment. The social sector encompasses the following: health, sanitation, education, social welfare, housing, protective services, sports and recreation, and other services. Up until 2028, these are the projected needs of the social sector. The areas of agriculture, forestry, commerce and trade, industry, and tourism compose the economic sector. Shown are the projected needs for food and crops production until 2028. The next slide is a list of potential investment projects for the city, mindful of the city's vision to become the country's most advanced and well-known local government for reduce, reuse, and recycle programs as reflected in the IM4 Davao. This is coupled with a plan to establish a recycling industrial park in Biao Escuela, which will cover recycling businesses such as automobile wrecking and scrapping, recycling of construction waste, used paper, medical equipment, aluminum and steel, among others. The infrastructure sector includes the following: transportation, water, power, information and communications technology. Projected needs in terms of infrastructure are now shown on screen. The forest ecosystem, ancestral domain, biodiversity, heritage, and coastal ecosystem. Issues and concerns in the aforementioned are enumerated in the next two slides. To further inform the CLUP for 2019 to 2028, a comparative analysis of the city's actual land utilization from 2011 and 2018 was done and have yielded the following findings. Land use for open and closed canopy forest increased in 2018 from 2011 due to the reforestation programs as mandated by the National Greening Program, as well as greening initiatives pursued by the city and local organizations. Portions of the area covered by brushlands, shrubs, and grasslands were planted with trees as part of the National Greening Program. In the inventory done in 2018, said portions were already considered part of the forest area, thus the significant decrease. Areas for agricultural use increased as permanent crops such as cacao and coffee planted in production forest areas now form part of the agricultural area. Increase in the land area for agri-industrial use resulted from the expanded activities of existing farms as they ventured into processing of agricultural products. Demand for residential spaces has increased, proportionate to the increase in the number of households. A slight increase in the commercial area coverage is due to the push for densification through vertical development. Portions of the area allocated for planned unit development have already been utilized either for commercial or residential use, thus the slight decrease in the area coverage in 2018. Over the 7-year period, there was a growth of steel factories in the Panacan to Lasang area of the city, which explains the increase in the area coverage for industrial use from 2011 to 2018. Increase in the land coverage is due to the expansion of private school campuses, construction of regional offices of national government agencies, and new private hospitals. Special institutions such as drug rehabilitation centers and aged care facilities have also been allocated in 2018. The area for tourism increased slightly with a portion of Barangay Eden Toril developed as a nature park and declaration of Chinatown as tourism development zone. Portion of the open space easement have already been utilized for other uses, thus the slight decrease in the land area. Inventory done in 2018 already included power lines and cell sites, which was not done in 2011, thus the increase in the coverage area for transportation, services, and facilities use. For roads, increase in the land area is due to new roads built. The 2018 inventory already included parks and recreation areas in subdivisions, as well as the Cleanergy Park of the Davao Light and Power Company in Punta Dumalag, which explains the land increase. The Build, Build, Build program of the national government contributed to the increase in the land utilization for quarrying. Roads inside cemeteries have been reclassified under utilities, transport services, and thus the increase in the land area for special use. Decrease in the coverage is due to the construction of a power plant which utilized parts of the fish pond area. Increase in the area coverage for mangroves can be credited to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources Mangrove Planting Program. The city had to also take stock of its strengths and potentials in the following aspects: environment, economy, infrastructure, and social aspects to spur the city towards its desired development direction. Another equally important aspect in rationalizing the city's land use is to take into consideration the development constraints, which determine the parameters, the extent by which land resources can or cannot be utilized. These are as follows. The next slide shows the development constraints map. Coming out of the sectoral studies are the additional area requirements for the following various uses. These data have also been considered in rationalizing the city's land use plan. Additionally, land use issues and concerns arose from the workshops organized in relation to updating the CLUP as enumerated. For the new CLUP cycle, the city will be guided by the following development thrusts. The city's focus of attracting meeting, incentives, conventions, and events is boosted by winning the bid to host MICECon 2020. Its hosting of Asia's premier travel and tour event, the Asian Tourism Forum, received one of the most glowing praises from foreign tourism associations and Asian governments. To increase this attraction, the city shall also encourage private owners to also establish and enhance model farms for farm tours and ecotourism trips to give additional option for educational, leisure, and consciousness-raising trips to organic farming, environmental protection, and ecological biodiversity. In ecotourism sites, the tribes in the area may be tapped to interact with local and foreign visitors, to explain and demonstrate some of their customary and traditional activities, like weaving, cooking, and performing dances and community prayers to enhance multicultural understanding. Medical tourism shall also be encouraged and allowed to flourish, owing to the improvements in air connectivity, plus the establishment of more medical facilities for medical tourism, making treatment and health advancement a leisure trip to wellness. Value adding is being promoted to increase the income of farmers and owners of these fruit farms. This is timely and significant, as the city has noted a decrease in designated area for agriculture from the previous approved area of 111,466 hectares in 2013 to actual reduction to only 66,129 hectares in 2018 after actual classification of lands devoted to planting of perennial crops such as cacao and coffee are being taken back under the forest and forest land classification. This must not be taken as a concern because the perennial crops are still there being grown but in the areas that are now appropriately classified and designated as production forest areas. Re-establishing the vegetative cover through agroforestry will stabilize the steep slopes against erosion and landslide. This additional ground cover, by permanent and high-value crops, will also rejuvenate the soil's soaking capacity to reduce the runoff and reduce the risk of flooding downstream of the city. This means, though, that there is a more compelling reason to infuse certain level of processing and value adding to increase the market value of the products from the farms and maximize the byproducts that can still be derived in processing the raw agricultural products. The strategy calls on focusing in investments in rural infrastructure, upgrading of farm technology, improvement of the value chain of major agricultural procurers, extension of credit for farm input, and development of food processing industries. In Davao City, commercial areas expanded by 3% from 2011, currently standing at 1,103.63 hectares. This is not a very significant leap, but if the total floor spaces they occupy are to be consolidated, a major increase can be measured given the emphasis of CBD development for multi-level or vertical projects. Commercial activities are marked mostly by wholesale and retail trade, but activities like BPOs have also made their mark in terms of employment and consumer spending by their personnel. Just how robust the local economy is may be reflected by the big number of banking offices and financial institutions. In the commercial district, some restrictions have been imposed, such as for parking, driveways, and sidewalks, especially along barangay, city, and national roads. The policy is that parking should not disturb pedestrian sidewalks and will not impede flow of traffic. Sidewalk elevation should not also be altered or slanted and should always be accessible to persons with disabilities. Retail stores should provide loading and unloading areas within the premises, rather than use the sidewalk and the road right-of-way for such purposes. A major policy to preserve and protect the environment will include the coastal areas and the reefs. This will avoid the usual pitfall among cities to turn their coasts into actual garbage and dumping site of both solid and liquid wastes, thus polluting the coastal waters and rendering coastal resources dead, unproductive, and pose actual health risks to residents. Massive mangrove planting, strengthening, and expansion of biodiversity programs shall be pursued to promote a sustainable environment for marine production. The city will as well adopt a multinodal concentric spatial strategy, promoting growth in all the districts while ensuring connectivity and sustainability of development in these areas. The Central Business District is currently expanding to adjacent areas due to rapid urbanization and the widening entrepreneurial character of the population to tap into the increasing consumer spending habit of both visitors and local residents. The Central Business District now includes areas as far south as Talomo, Tubuhangin in the northeast, and the barangays of Maa and parts of Catalunan Pequeño, Catalunan Grande, Langu, Magtuod, Cagato, and Cabantian in the northern part. A big portion of this district has transformed into an extended central business district. Commercial activities abound in Catalunan Pequeño, Matinang-Pangi, Matinang Crossing, Maa, and Catalunan Grande. Bago Galera is seen as a suitable place for expansion of the commercial center. Portion of this barangay is also appropriate for more residences. Maa would continue to be an important transportation highway. A transportation hub development program should be developed here, with a train station already designed to be built in the upper section of Maa Road. With a long coastline on its southern part, coastal rehabilitation should be enhanced in parts of Bagoa Playa and a large section of Dumoy. A biodiversity program is suited around Punta Dumalag. Spaces in Marapangi, Sirawan, Dinugao, Lizada, and Daliao are allocated for expansion of residential areas. In the barangays Toril proper, Sirawan, Lizada, Crossing Bayabas, and Tubogan, commercial, educational, and social activities would be concentrated. Tourism destinations would be in Eden, Tagurano, and Katigan, as mountain resorts and farms attract tourists with interests in agriculture, leisure, and ecological resources. Farm tours may also be developed in Tungkalan, as the area would continue as an agriculture production area. One critical watershed protection area is located here in Barangay Sibulan. This area is largely an agricultural and education and research center area. Areas in Mintal, Tugbok proper, Santo Niño, New Carmen, and Los Amigos emerge as places where people converge, seeking government services, looking for educational institutions, finding commercial centers, and some agri-industrial activities. Agricultural development would be situated in the area in and around Angalan, a section of Talandang, Riverside, Subasta, Ula, Tagakpan, and Tugbok. Freshwater fish ponds abound and still operate economically in Los Amigos, Balingaing, and Subasta. Expansion for residential spaces would be allocated in a portion or the whole of New Carmen. The expansion of the two important facilities in the city, Sasa Wharf and Davao International Airport, and the allocation of more spaces for them is crucial to meet the surging demand to accommodate more passengers, inbound traffic of planes, ships, and cargo. Demand for more residential areas is expected to increase as commercial activities continue to mark the economic activities in this district. Barangays Mandug, Indangan, and Kabantian are identified areas for residential expansion. The northern portion of this district is also good to pursue agricultural development, especially in Barangay Calyawa. The industrial area is located here, with manufacturing and factories already established and operating, notably in Barangay Mahayag, Tibungco, Ilang, and Bunawan proper. A transportation hub development area is suited for the area around the interior Barangay Mudjang, where the train station is identified to be built. A marine culture park is located in the Lasang area, and coastal rehabilitation through mangrove protection areas have been developed and to be enhanced further along the coast of Panacan, Ilang, Tibungco, Mahayag, Bunawan, and Lasang. Up in the northern section of Davao City are critical agriculture and forest areas that must be taken with great care for development and preservation. The rich ecosystem and fruit farms in this district may provide springboards to develop a good tourism destination, especially in Baguio proper, Cadalian, Malagos, Tawan-Tawan, Gumalang, Carmen, and Tambobo. The top commercial and transportation centers are in Malagos, Baguio, Tawan-Tawan, Cadalian, and Gumalang. A critical watershed protection area is identified in Barangay Carmen. Among the northern districts of the city, Kalinan is identified as more progressive due to its role as major transportation stopover for interprovincial bus routes coming from the northern provinces of Mindanao going to Davao City. Activities are largely agricultural, and agricultural development can be designed in Dalagdag, Lampianao, and Pangyan. Tourism facilities may also be developed for Barangay Lacson, Wangan, and Biao Joaquin. While this district is a major transportation stopover, the presence of a critical watershed protection area in Barangay Tamayong demands some protection measures. Alongside agriculture, agri-forestry activities can be developed in Barangay Megkawayan. This district has a large, continuous, critical watershed area. Tourism sites and commercial activities are proposed in Tanto Salumay, East Marahan, and Salaysay within a regulated environment. Forest rehabilitation is best undertaken in the edges of Gumitan to Buda and all the way to Malamba to increase the hectareage of the closed canopy forests. Barangays Marilog, Tamugan, Dato Salumay, Salaysay, and Buda are the current top areas of concentration of residents in this district. This district has watershed areas found in 11 barangays. The reforestation and rehabilitation done in Marilog to increase the closed canopy forest should expand to Tapak and Mapula in this district. The critical watershed area in Malabog could be developed into a tourism site, although Barangay Colosas is also identified for tourism. Agri-forestry could be undertaken along portions of the forests of this district. Commercial activities are in Paquibato proper and Malabog. Determination of the proposed settlement pattern took cues from the scaleogram, an analysis tool that shows centrality of settlements, with centrality determined by the presence of functions and facilities and its ability to provide goods and services to adjacent surrounding areas. Major settlement areas are Agdao, Buhangin, Poblacion, Talomo, and Turil. Minor settlement areas include Bunawan and Tugbo. An emerging settlement area is Kalinan, while satellite settlement areas include Baguio, Marilog, and Paquibato. In response to the earlier mentioned issues and concerns, the following programs will be pursued within the new CLUP period. The next 3 slides will show the proposed land and water use categories with the corresponding area allocation. For the new CLUP period, this will be the integrated zoning map.